Now, remember, if you create a console application, you come up, you do a File, New Project. And I'm under Visual C#, Windows Desktop, and here's Console App. And then I click OK on that. I give it a meaningful name if I want. And all of your code is going to be put in this these two braces down here under main.
So are we picking up where we left off, or are we doing a quick review?
We're doing a little bit of a review because it has been a week since we met. And then we're going to pick up where we left off.
All right.
And I'm not going to review everything, just kind of the more important topics. I think the last thing we looked at was a switch, but that's not that important. Remember, we had the if statement, where you could say if num1 is greater than 20, for example, and then braces there, and then console write line number was greater than 20. Now, if I run that, and it comes back and tells us number is greater than 20. I could do an else and say the opposite. Console.writeLine number was not greater than 20. Remember, we don't have to hard code this. We can bring it in. So I could say num1 is equal to console.readLine. And this is going to bring in as a string. So that'll bring us a string. We need to convert it to an integer. Remember, we had our int. I don't remember if those are capital. I think they are. Dot parse. And you change that to whatever variable type you're working with. Now, it helps to have a precursor on that saying what do they need to do. So I'll say console write line, input a number. Now, write line goes down to the next line. Write would stay on the current line. You can do it either way. So I put in 2, and it says number was not greater than 20. So that refreshed our memory on the read line, write line, and the if statement. Now we have a while loop. This allows us to loop through however many times. For example, if I wanted to find all the even numbers, or sum all the even numbers. So console.writeLine, program sums all even numbers up to a certain point. Now we're going to have another console.writeLine. And I'll say input ending number. And actually, probably right might make more sense on that, depending upon your viewpoint. So then I'm going to say num1 is equal to int32.parse. And then I'm going to have console.readline. Now I need some more variables up here. I'm going to have an index to keep track of the numbers where we're going from 2 up to whatever we input in. And I also want sum. Well, initially, we'll set our index equal to 2. And we'll set our sum is equal to 0. Our index is, again, going to go from 2, 4, 6, 8, all the way up to the number that's input. The sum is going to be the sum of them, of course. So that's why we set it equal to 0. Now, I'm going to have my while statement here. I'm going to check while the index is less than or equal to num1. For example, if they put 10 in for num1, index will originally be 2, so it'll be 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So that's when it'll stop. So before I do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and increment index. And I'm incrementing it by 2. So it'll go through all the even numbers. And I want to have a sum here. Sum is equal to sum plus my index. So index keeps changing. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, up to whatever number. And then this keeps adding those values into sum. And then I need to write out the console write line. The sum was, I think it's braces. We'll see. Sum. So let's run this. Do debug, start that debugging. And I'll put in, I'll put in 6. That should add up to 12, I think. 2 plus 4 is 6, plus another 6 is 12. Now, this right here, console.writeLine sum was, and I put braces around the number 0. That tells me that I got a parameter that I'm going to pass in. A number that I'm going to put into place of this %0 or brace 0 closing brace. I don't think the number matters. Let's try 1. See if that's a true statement. It does matter. I've always just put 0, but never really tried anything else. So that's how you can plug a number in the middle of a sentence. Any questions on the while?
Oh, I've been playing with them while we've been on break.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of this first chapter is not really a whole lot new. And what are they doing in this example? Use a while loop to print hello world for 20 times. Boolean is found is equal to false. Here they're using a Boolean flag. Boolean is true or false. There's really no benefit to doing what they're doing here. I think they're just demonstrating. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Could this be used later to like message like multiple people in a multiplayer game?
It could. Yeah, but they would never. They like got 2 flags here. See how they're got an additional flag here for the is found? You could equally have just put the value up here. So you didn't need a separate flag. I think they're just wanting to indicate you can have a Boolean flag instead of just checking numbers. For example, if I wanted to use this syntax, now I may not get it right the first time. But if I want to print hello world for 20 times. Well, the code doesn't even work. That's not going to print hello world for 20 times. How I'd program it is I need to have an index, and I'll start that at. I'll start theirs was 0, I think. Yeah, start theirs was 0. And I'll say while index is less than or equal to 99. And then I'm going to increase index by 3. And I may not get this right. Sometimes I don't know whether to go to 20 or 99 or to go to 1 less. But we'll see. And then we'll do a console. Dot right. Right line. Hello world. So let's try that and see. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Not even close. They're adding 3 each time. Well, let's try something else.
Would that be 33?
Is that what they have there? Well, they're increasing it by 3. Let me see. Let me think if you're right.
If you were to do 3 10 times, it would be
Right.
30. If you were to do it 20 times, it'd be 60.
60. Yeah, because if you divide them, right? 60 divided by 3 is 20. So what in the world are they doing here?
They may have it as like a placeholder.
Yeah, that code isn't going to work. Yeah, you're right. 60 would be the better one. Now I'm going to put that in there just to verify. And again, this will plug in index where that curly brace 0 closing curly brace is. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Assuming I had counted correctly. This is what I was talking about. I didn't know if I would get it right the first time. Less than 60 would be give me my 20 of them. And I could have a count here. You know, it's not too bad when you have 20, But if you got a whole bunch, then put a count in there. And set that equal to 0. And then in here, I'll say count is equal to count plus 1. And then I'll print out the count. That's just a temporary variable I put in there to help make sure I got my code correct. 1 through 20. And so that'd be your code. I wonder if they're trying to show us like one that doesn't even work at all. No, code snippet. Yeah, you're right. That would be 32 times, maybe? 33? I don't know. How many times does that print? I guess I can't go with their code examples too closely. Okay, we got our do while. This is where it will do what the code's inside at least once and then do the condition. Their code actually looks correct here. They set it equal to 1. It prints it here, so that's the first time. And then the count plus plus increases count by 1. So I go to 2, and this checks while count is less than or equal to 5. So since it's still less than or equal to 5, it'll come up here and do this again. So this should actually print 5 times. I'm not going to show that one. I don't like do whiles. You can do everything with your normal while loop. We also have our for loop that has 3 components to it. You got your variable initialization first, semicolon. Your condition, that's a Boolean condition, semicolon. And then it says increment, decrement, but it's whatever code you want to put there. So for example, if I want to print hello world 20 times. I'll say for int x equals 1. This is my initialization. I'm declaring a variable x and setting it equal to 1. And I want to continue while x is less than or equal to 20. And I'll say x is equal to x plus 1. And then I'll do console.writeLine hello world. I'll start without debugging. And 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 20. That'll be our hello world. Now, I increased x by 1 here, and we've talked about this before, but you could equally put a plus plus there. That automatically increases it by 1. And that's the usual notation when you use it in a for loop. But it does not have to be just increasing by 1. You could multiply this times 20. It doesn't care what you put here. This is just whatever you decide to increase or decrease your variable by. I think that'll appear twice, print twice, but let's see. Yeah, that just prints twice. So yeah, you can have anything there. It says increment, decrement, but it's whatever modification you want to make there. I wonder what that gives us besides the infinite loop. You can see it gives you total control. You can just say x equals x plus 0, which doesn't do anything. Doesn't change the value of x. They print hello world 5 times, and it's a very concise way to work it. You see count is equal to 1. We say it's an integer to begin with, and then we continue while count is less than or equal to 5. And this is what we do each time through our loop. We increase count by 1. Now there's a for each loop. And for each variable item and collection, then you can run your code. So let's take a look at this. We got int, and then beginning bracket, closing bracket. That's declare something called an array, a list of numbers or a list of something. And then we, it says array, but that's whatever name you want to call it. Not sure if a proper name for array is array. So I'll say nums. And then we got equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Okay, so this again is means it's an integer number with no decimals. The brackets there tells it's a list of them, so you're going to have multiple ones. We give it some kind of name, and this initializes it, so it sets the values equal to 1 through 5. Now the way that indexes work, when we're talking about arrays, list of numbers, we got the numbers 1 through 5 there. And there, I can increase it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To access the individual numbers, we would have to refer to the index. Index is its placement within the table or the list. Well, when you're talking about arrays, they always start with numbering of 0. So that's my 0th entry. This is my first entry. This is my second entry. This is my third entry. And this is my fourth entry. So to go through these numbers that I've just stored in an array, I have to go from 0 to 4. So over here, I could have for int x equals 0, continue while x is less than or equal to 4, x plus plus, and I'll do a console.writeLine, and I'll say %0. Actually, so I'm not going to have any other code with it, or any other explanation, I should say. This will be nums x. Now, if I run that, prints the numbers 1 to 5. Because again, this first entry right here is a 0th entry. And so that's why we started with x equals 0. This is our first entry, this is our second entry, this is our third entry, and this is our fourth entry. And again, that's why I went from 0 to 4. Now that's one method. Now, their technique here is you say for each, and you say int item in array. So for each, int item in nums. And then I'll do a console.writeLine. And what do they say? Oh, they're just printing it. Item. And then if I run that, 1 through 5, 1 through 5, they accomplish the same task. What do you think the benefit would be of using the for each, though? you notice I hard-coded the number of entries I have here. Down here, I did not hard-code the items. The for each goes through all of the items in my list, my array. So if I were to add another number up here, 6, maybe 2 more numbers, 7, this first bit of code is not going to work anymore. I mean, it'll work, but it doesn't want to work correctly. Prints 1 through 5, and then it's the next one prints 1 through 7. So the for each is more robust. It's less prone to errors because it doesn't care how many's in there. It'll just go through all of them. Now, you don't have to have just integers there. SVAL. So down here, I could say for each string s in sval console.writeLine yes. And if I run that, see it prints David, Frank, Mary. So what I've done is I declare it as a string, which means it can have any kind of character in there, alphabetic, numeric, so forth, special characters. I did the bracket to indicate it's an array. It's a list. And I called it sval. And then I set equal to David, Frank, and Mary. Then down here, I did it for each, and notice my variable type changes here. This has to match what you're going through. S in sval, and then I just do a print on it. So again, it doesn't matter what type it is, the for each will handle it. You have some jump statements in C#. There's go to. Don't use this. It's a horrible programming construct. It's where you put a label of some sort with a colon, and it doesn't have to be called label. And then somewhere in your code, you do a go to it. Like here, if I have a, now how we do a label is you put a colon after it. It's called start. And then down here, we'll say go to start. And if I run this, it's an if and a loop. When this declares a label, just like a name, like a city. A city has a name. One of its purposes is for directional purposes, such if I tell you to go to Wichita, you know where to go. If I tell you to go to Wellington, you know where to go. So that gives it a destination. Then down here, when you do the go to, this goes to it. So it does all this code, hits the go to, comes back up here. Does all this code, does the go to, comes back up here. Now you can program this different ways. A lot of times if you have a go to there, you'd have a go to in the middle here, going to the end. Like down here, I declare label. Probably end is a bad thing to call it, but we'll try it. It's usually end is usually a reserve word. So how about end of code? Then here, I'd say go to end of code. Acts like it doesn't like something there. Maybe I gotta have something after it. Add end. Unreachable code detected. It knows that if I come down here and I run this goto, it'll automatically come down here and it won't even do this bit of code right here. I expect it'll still run though, but let's try it. Yeah. It's considered bad programming practice to use gotos, but it is in the language if you need it for some reason. And you can read those. It's just such a poor construct. I'm not going to talk about that. It negates the proper programming logic. Proper programming logic is that it just naturally flows through, and you control it with the different constructs of the programming language without using the gotos. For example, if I want to print the numbers from 1 to 20, I'll say for int x equals 1, x is less than or equal to 20, x plus plus, and I'll do a console dot write line x. Run that. And I see I get numbers 1 and 20. Another way, loop start, and maybe I need to declare a variable. Int index equals 1. And then here I could put, I'm not sure if it'll let me space that over, but I'll try. Index is equal to, or well, first, console.writeLine index. And then it'll say index is equal to index plus 1. And if index is greater than 20, then I'm going to go to the finish. If it's not greater than 20, then I'm going to go back to loop start. And I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around this. Down here, I'll have the finish. And I suppose I've got to print something. Console.writeLine. All done. See if it even works. Print numbers 120, print numbers 120. You'll notice this is very clean, concise code. It's easy to understand, easy to follow. This is not clean or concise. Trying to understand what in the world's going on here is not so easy to see. So gotos are bad. All that just say don't use gotos. Now I don't like breaks either. Breaks break out of a loop. So here's checking if this number is equal to 3, which would be this entry right here. Then it wants to break out. And what that does is it breaks out of the for loop. their explanation is not quite right. It says when above code snippet executes, output will be end of loop. That's not quite right. It within this for loop, it's looping from 0 to 9, 1 less than 10, increasing it by 1. If it's equal to 3, which is this entry right here, then it's going to break out, not do the rest of that for loop, and come down to this end of loop. But before it gets there, we have, let me see, we have I is equal to 0, so that's 1 time. We got I is equal to 1. Now remember this list here, that's a 0th entry. This is a first entry. So it should print the numbers 0 or 1 and 2, and then it should say end of loop. Continue just skips the current iteration and moves the control to the next iteration of the loop. So it stays in the for loop or while loop or whatever, but it finishes that iteration and then goes to the next one. Again, I don't like that very well. I think that's considered poor programming practice. Now return is useful. That's useful in functions. And that's where you return a value. Grab a drink here. Where would that be used at? Well, if I come over here, above the main, I could declare int doublet. This hopefully isn't one I've already done. I don't have a good memory, so it may be. And okay. Then I'm going to return 2 times num. So down here, if I ask the user for a number, I'll say num1. And I'll say console.writeLine input number. Num1 is equal to int32.parse. And I'll bring in console.readline. And then I'll do a console.writeLine doublet num1. Yeah, it doesn't like something. Object reference is required for a non-static field or property. Let me just run it and make sure that there's an issue. Int doublet, int num. Unless I put this in the wrong place. Throw it up here. No. There. Okay, input a number, I put in 6, returns 12, so doubles it. What this does, though we've talked about methods, functions, subroutines before, I thought you really could put it outside of the main, but I mean, I'm mixing this up, I think, with C programming. But I get a number from the user, and then this calls this. So this says double it, and it's passing in num1. That's our parameter. That's our argument. Comes up here, it calls this double it, passing in this number. Now I calculate 2 times that number, and then I do a return. That returns the value to the program. Specifically, it'll replace all this doublet num1 with whatever value gets returned. In the case if I put 6 in for the num1, it'll return 12. So this will be replaced by 12. This tells us what we're returning. Are we returning an integer or double or what exactly? Is that good on the methods of functions, subroutines? Okay. But that's what they're referring to in the return statement. Sometimes you can just return nothing. It says return without a value. I think it returns 0. No, I'm not sure. Here's where you start talking about the return within the method. You notice here we got int sum, and then we're passing in int a and int b. And we're adding them together and then returning the sum. If I was going to have another method here, and I wanted to calculate double amount. And this is what I'm programming here. Is from college algebra, or just algebra. You have a formula A is equal to P e to the RT power, which means we need to pass in principal, which is double. We need to pass in rate, which is double. And we need to pass in time, which is also, we'll assume it's double. Now, if you've brought all those in, then you could calculate a new variable, return amount. Now, say return amount is equal to principal times E. If I type math.e, this represents a natural log base, which E is 2.718, much decimal places. And I don't know if caret works in C# or not, but we'll try it. Caret. And then rate times time. And then return amount. Must not like the caret. Caret not, okay. So I need to raise it to a power. Well, in the math library, there's a math.pow. And this is a method. And so we're going to raise e to the power of, that's why I did a comma. What follows a comma is our power, which is rate times time. And now I return it. So again, when you call this, it'll calculate my ending amount based upon the principal, rate, and time. So down here, I could ask the user for all that. Double P, R, and T. Typically, one variables are not appropriate, but if you're using this formula, the formula is based upon one, I should say one character variable. So I'm going to say console.write input principal. And P is going to equal to double.parse and console.readline. And I got console.write input, what's the next one? Rate. Excuse me. And R is going to equal to double.parse and console.readline. And then I need to bring in time. So say console.write input time. And T is equal to double.parse console.readline. And now we need to call that function. We could set it equal to another variable if we wanted to. For example, if I wanted a variable called A, I could set it equal to A. So A is equal to amount, and I'm passing in principal, which is P, comma rate, which we said was R, and T, which is time. And then I'll do a console.writeLine, and I'll print off A. Notice that my declaration down here for principal does not have to match name-wise this one up here. They can be two different names. They have to be the same type. They both have to be double. If I try to throw a string into a double, it'll give me an error of some sort. And if I run that, in a principal, I'll put in 1,000. Rate is 0.03. Time is 10 years. And that gives me my amount. Anyway, just another example of how to use a method, function, subroutine, called by different names. Talking about how all variables inside the method are local variables. What that means is I declare a return amount right here within this bit of code, within this method. I cannot access it down here. If I had to try to do a console.writeLine, and I tried to print return amount, you see it's got a red squiggly underneath it. Won't let me even do it. That's because since I declared return amount right here within the method, it only exists within the method. Once the method's done, it returns a memory and says, okay, I'm done. I don't need that anymore. Now down here, my variables P, R, T, and A. Let's try to print one of those up here. Console.writeLine, and I'll print A. Again, you notice we got a red squiggly. That's because A only exists down here. It does not exist within our method. This functionality allows you to have a smaller program. When you get ready to use variables, you assign them, use them, and then you give them back to the program. Versus where you try to make all of your variables available at the very beginning of your program. If you make them all available throughout the entire program, they can consume a lot of memory. Let's talk about named argument. Helps us pass values in random order. All we need to do is use a parameter name with a colon, pass the value there. For example, if it's declared as A comma B, that's how you should be inputting it. You can put it in a different order by doing B colon 5, A colon 10. So you don't have to put them in the same order if you put the name of the argument in front of it. You can have optional arguments. You see here, we say int b is equal to 1. That means that it's just fine if they want to pass a parameter, an argument in for that variable. But if they don't, we're going to default it to 1. Here's how you pass by reference with a reference keyword. Pass by value is you actually pass in a value that you can use. Pass by reference means you're passing in the memory location of where it's stored at. Why would you need to do that? I'm not going to write a program to demonstrate this, but we've talked a little bit about this before. If we had a list of numbers and there's 100,000 entries, now I know within my code I can access a value directly. I don't have to go through all 100,000 entries. Maybe through our method that we're creating, you're going to pass that array of numbers, and you don't know what you necessarily need. So what you do is you pass all 100,000 entries. Now that's not very efficient, because imagine if you were calling it 10,000 times. Then you would have, I got 10,000 times 100,000 entries. And that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So what we'd be passing in is 1 billion pieces of data. A lot of programming languages are built up such that if you're passing in an array, a list of numbers, it by default is by reference. Now what referencing means is I pass in one pointer of where the list is stored at. So passing by reference, I'm passing in a pointer to where the list is located. So instead of passing in all those bits of data, the 1 billion numbers, we're passing in just a memory location. We're still calling it 10,000 times, so we're passing in a total of 10,000 memory locations. The memory location indicates where's the array stored at. And so in your program, when you go to update it, it updates the memory directly. Unless you got a lower level language, you don't really need to worry about the details behind that. Just know that when you're accessing the entry in that array, that table, it's accessing it directly. Here's an example. See how they're referencing or they're using the REF? That indicates that when I update it'll update the memory location directly. Of course, this is assuming that I is a global variable and I can do this. This talks about the out keyword. Works the same as a ref keyword. Difference is we can pass a non-initialized variable to method's argument by using the out keyword. Also, it is used to get more than one return parameter from a method. Out signifies a reference parameter, which means the keyword passes an argument by reference. Talks about passing an empty variable method. And you see here when we call it, here's our definition. We got the out method here, and I got it declared out int_i. And over here, when I call the out method, notice what I have to put there. I had to put the out and then space the variable name. Now, this variable is not actually declared to be equal to 1, 0, or anything. It's just sitting out there, and that's what they're referring to. Personally, I think it's poor programming practice to not initialize a variable. Let me just stand for a second. This talks about use a parameters array to pass unlimited method argument. You see we got params, int, brackets, and then args. That's what we have here. We got main, and then string, and then brackets, and then args. A little bit different than this. Over here, we just declared the type and then args. Here they give it a name, the params. The idea on this is that you could pass in arguments, parameters, when you run this program. If I look where this is stored at, you got your executable here, your application. And I'm going to highlight that. And I'm going to run the command prompt. And I'll paste that in. And it's called console app 13. So if I do a slash, I'm going to start typing console app. Well, debug console app 13. .exe. There we go. No, that's still not running it. Console app 13. Case shouldn't matter. Oh, it doesn't. But it doesn't like spaces in there. Just guessing. CP. What am I doing? Using Linux commands. Access is denied. How about temp? There we go. Okay, so console app 13.exe. If I run that, it says input principal, put in 1,000. Rate is 0.03. Time is 10 years. Gives me that. You could even leave that off and have it work the same. And I could even do something like that. So I can pass in parameters to my main program, arguments. Now, I have not put any code in, so this actually doesn't do anything. But this just tells you can put an unlimited number of arguments in. And that's what they're referring to in the book. Unlimited method argument. That's where you can pass in however many. Notice they use a for each to print out the what was input in. So let's take a look at that. I'll get rid of this bit of code here. Although I suppose I could leave it there. String PR and T, or SP, SR, and ST for string principal, string rate, string time. And I need to, I'm bringing in the arguments. Actually, I won't do that. I'll just do it for each. In the interest of time. INT, I'm going to say double. Double item in args. Yeah, args. Now, they, what do they do to theirs? Looks like they add them together. But I'm going to print mine out. So I do a console.writeLine. And I'll print out item. And what is it like that? Cannot convert string to double. Because they're not coming in as doubles, they're coming in as strings. Okay, so if I run that, build errors, WriteLine A. Oh, put that code in there just to break it. Okay, let me clean this up. Just get rid of all that extra junk. Okay, so now well, there it is. Save program as. And I'll click up here because I want to grab this directory structure. So I right click on it, choose copy. And change the bin, change the debug. Copy the exe to my C:temp directory. So I'll run console app. And I'm going to pass in 1000.03, 4. That's not good. I think I took that code out of there. I must not copied the right one. But what it'll do, that should overwrite what was there. Must not went to the right directory. What this will do is it'll just print out the arguments that you pass in right here. So that's kind of a nice bit of code to help you with that. And talked about our summary. Now the programming projects out of this chapter. The first one will be challenge 1: develop a calculator application. This is nothing exciting. We've already done the add over in the GUI side. You just need to figure out how to do it with the console commands, the write line and read line. They even give you a picture what they're wanting. You have to think how to implement a do you want to continue again. That's actually a loop of some sort. Probably a for loop wouldn't be good. While loop is probably your best option there. And the second one is this develop a student report card application. And again, they give you an example of how they want you to do it and how to set it up and so forth. And they give you some tips on that. They'd say use a multi-dimensional array to store student information. You don't have to do that. You could use a series of single-dimension arrays. For example, if I'm keeping track of the student name, their position, and their total. Well, and I have up here student name, what's the next one? Integer, position, int position, and total. And I'm not sure if that should be double or not, but so you can do this breakdown here. And each time you come up here and they enter a new student name, you increase the index for all of them. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say my index is equal to int index is equal to 0. Now you do have to declare these with sizes. Down here, student name equals, let's see if I can remember the syntax. New int 10. Oh, it's a string. And position is equal to new int 10. This declares a size, so it's not going to handle anything bigger than that without some rework. Totals equal new int 10. And when I have my loop here in some form, you figure out how to do that. It says use loops to iterate over each student's information to generate a report. I can bring in, like index is equal to 0. Then I can say console.writeLine input student name. And then I can say student name index is going to equal to console.readline. And console.write input position. And I can say position index is equal to console is equal to int32.parse. Because remember, console readline comes in as a string. And console.readline. And then console.write. And we'll say input, what's the last one? Last one's total. Total index is equal to int32.parse. And console.readline. And then I could increase the index by 1. Like that. Now, I did not put this in a loop, but you could have put this in a while loop, checking, asking the user if there's any more students. And based upon what they enter, you increase index by 1 and go through and do that. Does that make sense how you can use separate arrays? I assume assuming I don't hear anything that you're good with that. There's different ways you can do that. If you think of a better way of doing it, then that's fantastic. You see here they output should be like press any following key, enter total students 2, and then they will come up and ask you. So this is a for loop. That's where up here you'd ask how many students there are total, and then you put in a for loop. Let's just say the number of students is in the variable called number of students. And have this. Now, it wouldn't be less than or equal to, be a less than, but because our index starts at 0. And I wouldn't need to increase index, but of course I need to have the right variable here. That would be your for loop. So that should get you started on that. You ask up here how many students there are, and then you got for int index equals 0, continue while index is less than number of students. So if they put in 2 students, it starts off with index equals 0, and then it goes to index equals 1, and that's your 2 students. That's why we do a less than. And then it increases the index each time, which means it'll update each individual entry in those particular arrays. You can use a multi-dimensional array if you want, but I think they're used too much sometimes, and they make the program a lot harder to read. Sometimes they're necessary, but well, we're done with that chapter, and those will be your two programming assignments. We only got about 4 more minutes. So I'll go ahead and stop there. There's not enough time really going to the next chapter. So we'll do that on Wednesday. Is there any questions on any of that? I'll go ahead and stop the recording.